Welcome to This Is Vinyl. Today I'm delighted to be able to speak to an old colleague of mine called Mark Lewis. Mark currently runs B Unique Records with his partner, but famously ran London Records A&R for a considerable time, and before that was an artist manager. Amongst some of the highlights of his career, he signed very iconic artists such as Echo The Bunnymen, Kodaline, and I've worked with him as a publisher, as a songwriter manager for a number of years. He's hard to pin down, but we've managed to get hold of him. So today, I'm incredibly delighted to talk to my old friend Mark Lewis.
What started you on this vinyl collecting thing?
Talking about vinyl, I guess you've got to start at the beginning, haven't you, of how what it means to you and what your memories of it are. Because I guess probably like yourself, the vinyl started for me as the 45. Basically, that's pretty much all we could afford at the time was going down to Woolworths, getting those 45s, be it, early Bowie or Mud or Slade or Sweet or T-Rex or, that was like you'd go down to Woolworths once a week and you'd get yourself you'd pick your song from the chart that you liked and
in your pound note.
That was a massive moment. I mean, if you messed that up, if you got the wrong one, I mean, that was, horrendous, wasn't it? If you got really, ideally you wanted one with a good B-side. Bowie was always good for that. But, I remember, I can't remember what the track was. Is it Changes with John, I'm Only Dancing, and another great, there were three great tracks on one of his.
Because I remember getting Changes on the B-side of a version of Space Oddity, which is one of the first ones I bought.
I think that's the one. I think it's Space Odyssey on one side, Changes, and John, I'm Only Dancing. I think it was a 3-track. I think it must have been a reissue of Space Odyssey. But so that's how it all really sort of started when you're 9, 10, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then what happened was, once we got a little bit older, there was a shop called Penny Lane Records, which was in Penny Lane in Liverpool. They obviously thought, Penny Lane, great place to open a record shop, eh?
Yeah.
So actually it was in South Liverpool. So it wasn't in town. It was in South Liverpool, which is where we were from and where we went to school. And we just used to hang around in that shop. They must have been so sick of us. We'd eventually buy one record between us potentially and share it.
Yeah.
But, play music all day and you'd just be listening to it would be much more, it was sort of pre-punk, but kind of getting into punk time. So I remember hearing in there, I'd heard, the first 4 bars of Marquee Moon.
Yeah.
What's that? And I'd never heard anything like it before.
It was the bass it was the bass where I went to hear new music. And I was quite, I don't know, in awe of, it's a bit like that Jack Black film,
Yeah, 100%.
You're walking in and there's these guys behind, they're older guys, they're probably only teenagers, but they're guys and they are very cool. And we had the same as Caller's Records in Newcastle that, we would go to the store downstairs and it was a record store upstairs and going in and going through the racks there and terrified that you're going to get it wrong. I'm not saying that to you.
We'd be listening, but essentially they were playing music all day. It was like the High Fidelity film, and you'd be listening. We'd just be hanging out, and they kind of tolerated us because they knew at some point we'd buy something. And as I say, we'd be buying the Ramones records or a Talking Heads, Talking of Your T-shirt, or it was initially we were attracted more to the American punk, what we called American punk, which was even going back to the New York Dolls, which kind of had a resurgence around, if you remember, and Richie Hell and things like that. So we would be. I think the shop were playing a lot of that stuff, and it took a bit longer for us to get into the kind of UK punk stuff, really. But so that was my big memory. Was like, and it would be a case of walking into school Monday morning. And it was a flex, I guess. It was like, we just bought this record by Television, and everyone would be like, I've never heard of them.
Did you have the thing where you carry the record in with?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you'd have the record on you, and everyone would be like, "What's that? What's that?" So it was like a we were the sort of guys who discovered everyone else was into Meatloaf and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So idea Meatloaf.
Yeah.
That was the sort of, you know, because there was that point where music kind of turned, but a lot of other people stayed with the kind of, you know, the sort of either pub rocky stuff or the ELO, Eagles, Meatloaf. We were very much on the other side. It was quite a lot of fun.
I know. I remember getting chastised by a kid at school because I'd bought a Boomtown Rats single, and he was like, "What do you want to buy that for?" I was like, "Because it's you know," and it was She's So Modern, I think it was. You know, it's like that's in single or something stupid. I thought it was great. But
yeah. I think then what happened in Liverpool was that once you sort of graduated past that Penny Lane thing, which was quite provincial, because it was like, you know, South Liverpool was quite a way out of town. You then sort of, once punk was fully in play, it was then all about Probe Records, which I'm sure you probably heard of, which was turned out to be a label as well. But that was where it got serious. You know, that was where you really had to make sure you were asking for something cool.
Yep.
You had Pete Burns with his hair out about here serving behind the counter. And, you know, it was definitely like, that's where we got the Clash records and the Bunnymen records and the Teardrop Explodes records. And, you know, that was that stage really.
And did they, I mean, I guess they probably did support the local acts that were coming through. So you mentioned the Bunnymen and Teardrop Explodes and stuff, you know, because I kind of wasn't so much of a scene up in Newcastle that were kind of those bands were around at that time. So
yeah,
was
really big scene in Liverpool.
Yeah,
you know, you had. I mean, they did really support it. I mean, Pro put out some of the records. Obviously, I think they put out Half Man, Half Biscuit, which was a little bit later, but it was definitely like, you know, you had War, you had, you know, War Heat. You had Teardrop, Echo The Bunnymen. You had lots of the sub bands of that.
Bicycle Work,
orchestral maneuvers. You know, there were Dalek. There was tons and tons of bands, and they were all knocking around Probe. I think Zoo, who managed Teardrop and the Bunnymen, had their office somewhere next to that as well. So there was this little enclave, and obviously Eric's was there as well. Eric's was literally next door. So that became our kind of central point really of the whole scene was going in there, flicking through the records. It's very exciting.
What point did you graduate from buying singles to buying albums? I think
pretty quickly into albums. I mean, I don't know exactly what the point was, but it was definitely like there was that period of Woolworths 45s for sure. And that was, I mean, I want to say like by the time I was maybe 12, 13, that was done. And it was very much albums after that. We didn't really buy singles at all to that period. Until later, actually, when I got a jukebox much later, that's another story. But
and it becomes this obsession to kind of find all of those singles that you probably in the first place.
The boxes up there, I still got the jukebox is well retired and dead, but the boxes of singles are up there, and you know, it was about trying to find the one with the B-side that was amazing, or that, you know, that was, and we got tons of them. We had this great sort of old 50s jukebox, but well deceased, I'm afraid.
I've got to get myself one at some point. I need that. I've got, I don't know, thousands of singles, I suppose, because I DJ'd for quite a long time as well. When I was a kid, I bought them all, and obviously since running the record shop, I've just been inundated with boxes and boxes and boxes. I can't sell them all because, you know, there's just so many. You know, that
you haven't got room for them all, basically, at the moment. Yeah,
I know, and I keep finding these gems and going, why isn't that out? You know, I love it.
It's good to have the stock, though, isn't it? To kind of
technically, it's mine, isn't it?
It's your collection as such until you decide to put it in the shop and then sell it.
It's just resting in my account.
But I think what then happened, you know, allied to that kind of. So you had this sort of scene where you had, you know, lots of local musicians walking around. Liverpool, you had Probe Records, obviously very hip, selling all the great records, and then you'd at night you'd listen to John Peel, and then then it became like a circle of you'd go to local gigs, you'd listen to John Peel, you'd go to Probe, and it was like a circle of just discovery and wonderland, really. I mean, it was amazing. It was an amazing time.
Do you think it was better in a sense because we're roughly the same age? And we didn't have that many avenues to find about new music. John Peel, I mean, I was under the covers with a little transistor radio earbud in
there with me.
And and there was time where I could get Luxembourg and stuff and going in and out of tune, trying to kind of listen to them. But because there was not a huge amount of exposure, so there wasn't that many TV channels or anything like that. It was really important to find those points at which you can discover new music. And I guess I never really made the leap, but John Peel to the record shop and back is
I think it became your identity essentially. I don't think music quite plays that role anymore. I mean, I think people are more rounded now music-wise. They like all sorts of music, but I think in that time particularly, it really was about your identity. The music that you liked was your identity. It was how you dressed. It was everything really. And it was a tribal thing. I think you like these type of things. I think we roughly liked very similar things and went to the same kind of gigs. And, it was, I mean, for me, the first band that really made me like realize I wanted to be in music was The Clash. I snuck into Eric's at 14. I don't know how I got in. Funny enough, I was with a friend last night from school who stuck in with me, and we still don't know how we got into this day. We think someone just looked kindly on us. I mean, we clearly didn't have a ticket. And we somehow are in the venue as 14-year-olds, but we got in, and it really was like, wow, this is it. I want to be part of this. This is like greatest band ever. Even I think it was a very early incarnation with a Special supporting them.
All right.
They were called Special AKA at the time. And I think Suicide were on the bill as well. But it was one of those life-changing nights where you were like, this is what I want to do. And I'd already started playing the guitar, but it was like this was the turbo in the tank of like, you better,
that's the gas.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had this thing with, I think it was the Stranglers, one of the first shows I went to, and all the lights went off, and I could see with these little red dots, and the tension was building massively. And the next thing I knew, the Punter Blinders came on, and they smashed into No More Heroes, and that was gone. That was it. All over for me. I didn't want ever to do anything else.
Yeah, I think you have that moment, and there's no turning back. Almost, school became kind of almost just an aside to how do I. At first, it was how do I become, the musician I want to be, and then obviously, your second and third prize comes along as you realize you're not good enough to do that, and then the second prize is you're going to be a producer. Well, you're not quite good enough to do that. And the third prize is to be a manager. And
exactly.
You know what I mean? But we all go for the first prize usually, but doesn't usually work out.
So now that you come kind of full circle, if you're kind of trying to source a bit of vinyl, is it really important to you that you try and get one of those first pressings that came out back in the day, or are you happy with just a reissue?
No, I funny enough, I'm not as fussy about that as I think some people will be.
Yeah.
I've got a little bit more, I suppose, knowing a bit more about the process. I'm actually relatively comfortable that a remastered vinyl can actually sound really great.
Yeah.
So I'm not as, I don't mind having the original pressing is great. I'm not saying I don't get that, but I actually have confidence in a remastering process that they do sound really good. And I have A-B'd, got a couple of records where I have the original. Obviously the original very scratched. So A being is not really fair, but you can see that the quality difference, it can be a lot better on vinyl, especially if it's done properly.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of pretty much the same. I had a kid in the shop the other day sort of came up to me and he said, "You've got a copy of Primal Scream up there. Why is it 90 quid?" And I was like, because I can get it for £25. So I said, well, you can get a really good version for £25, but not that one, because that's the Creation Records first press of that single. This is something I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously you spent a long time let's say the London Records, for example. I have this kind of theory that a lot of the labels around at the time, I was doing a lot of the promo, you were making the records, but kind of without realizing it, that the record labels were creating a highly collectible commodity, because there was so little vinyl being manufactured at the time. It was all driven by kind of demand for CD and stuff.
Yeah.
Did you find that when you were, how easy was it for you at London to actually fight to get any vinyl pressed for, I know you would have been looking at bands like Faith No More, The Bunnymen.
It wasn't as hard for certain type of acts. So I think it made a lot of sense I don't remember fighting to get vinyl made for certain type of acts. The problem was that at the time, vinyl was, and still is, very expensive to produce. It's a hell of a process. So record labels, it was really the indie world that persevered with vinyl and stuck with it. The majors were quite quick to kind of start, nipping around the corners of like, oh, we're not going to make All Saints vinyl, or we're not making, it became a bit of, I mean, they probably did make All Saints vinyl, but you know what I mean? If anything was looking like it wasn't going to be successful, the vinyl was the first thing to, it's just that we don't need to press vinyl, and it was definitely a casualty. I think the 90s was the time where, CD completely overtook everything, and then it really, it was pretty tough. But I don't remember ever fighting to get vinyl made. I was making like the Shack record, which we did a really nice pack on, Echo. I mean, I can't remember what else we were doing, but they were all vinyl led. But it was definitely a cutting corners time for sure.
Yeah. And did you? I mean, how long ago was Be Unique? Like 25 years?
No, 2001. So 23. It's basically 24 years.
4 years. And when you started that, I mean, how was that? Were you kind of more CD driven at that point, or were you kind of we're going to do vinyl?
No, I mean, I would be lying if I said vinyl was a priority for us at the time. The priority for us at the time was to survive.
Yeah.
Because, I had 2 young children under 4.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, it seems a bit of a crazy idea to start a label. But so I'd be lying if I said, oh, yeah, we were all about vinyl. We weren't, but we did make quite a lot of vinyl at the time. And again, it was down to the sort of acts. And if you remember, at the time, vinyl was a bit of a marketing tool for indie music, essentially. And we were making indie music, or, we had that whole emo section of Alkaline Trio, Saves the Day, Dashboard Confessional, all of those kind of acts where, vinyl was pretty important. And so but I would definitely say it wasn't something we were thinking about, to be honest with you. It really wasn't.
No, because we got a lot. I mean, it's going back to Revolution and promo days of working with different formats. It seemed to me that a lot of labels were really happy to press singles on vinyl, 12-inch in particular, because there was the whole situation, which you probably did as well, where getting certain DJs to remix indie tracks, if you like.
Yeah.
Crossover thing going on between what was an indie club, and then you had a dance club, and then never the twain shall meet. Suddenly, middle of all this, there started to be these kind of like indie alternative dance clubs where you were getting remixes of independent bands at the time. So for us, it was important we had vinyl, because that's what the DJs used.
No, I know. I mean, that's you lived off that with Revolution. But if you remember, I think it was from the mid-90s, early to mid-90s, and I don't know whether it was Food who started it, but essentially vinyl just became a marketing tool per se. You either had your 12-inch, you had your colored singles, you had your digi double pack. There were every marketing guy was thinking of a different way to get his record in the chart.
Yeah.
Go in at 27.99 the following week because they loaded up vinyl. So it really was. I think there was a period from sort of early 90s to whenever, I can't quite remember where it ended, where vinyl was really quite a sort of game. Really, it was a game.
It was a necessity. I mean, we used to get, working with bands like Oasis, I'd have 400 12-inch singles. Like some of them were one-sided ones, some of them were white label. Yeah. Some of them were, actually that's smart work on it. I wish I'd kept a few because now those things are going for
one with a few of them. Yeah.
300 quid a pop, which, and when I think about, we had a warehouse room full of them.
I think until the real resurgence of vinyl, it was a format game that a lot of people played. I mean, I think when we released the Kaiser's album, we did some really nice packaging there, and I have sort of I think it was Callie who was helping us out at the time to thank for that. That was very sort of very beautiful because the whole concept of the album was that it was a game you played, and so we made like games, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
So
that's interesting. I mean, the idea that vinyl as a marketing, I think the first time I was exposed to it, I was working in a record shop when I left university in Virgin Records, and they released Bros, and I couldn't work out why, the 3 7-inch singles, it's the same single, but each one had a different band member on the front. So of course all the girls were coming in and buying all 3.
Yeah.
So, and they were all chart eligible. So it's kind of that was the first occasion I think it got me thinking, this is a really clever way of marketing your band. And I was totally oblivious to it before that. And then going on to work with acts like Garbage, for example, that had an amazing 7-inch single series, about six singles or something like that, were all very cleverly thought out and differently formatted, things.
Yeah.
The games you could play with it. And you're right, it's that whole idea that maybe vinyl at that point was more about a marketing idea than it was an end product. Yeah. We're probably buying those albums on CD.
Yeah, I don't think we were. I think at that time it was very much seen as format driven for the certain type of music, and I think it's only relatively recently, last 8 to 10 years, would you say? I can't put a time frame on it, but where vinyl actually became a real thing, as in rediscovered.
Forward to you now, and with B-Unit Records now. So we talked a little bit about Kingfisher earlier on. Another artist that you've got, with I don't know, Kodaline or whatever.
Yeah.
Is that one of the things that it's really important that you do that vinyl package?
Yeah. Well, we just put out a live album for Kingfisher. They sort of had this ambition. They were going to play the Olympia in Dublin. That was their kind of, this is what we're going to do. And earlier in the year, they did 2 nights at the Olympia. So obviously they were delighted. So we thought, we'll make a vinyl album of that. And it's, it's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Everyone's names on the record, everyone who ordered it. And yeah, it's important. Kodaline the same. We've done some really good packs, double vinyls, and yeah, I mean, there's so much you can do. There's so much, sometimes I get the impression that people just buy it because they want it as a thing to put on the wall. Like, they're not necessarily going to play it. And you had that thing, didn't you? And you still got it where you get the download code.
Yeah.
I mean, really, you just stream it if you want to play it. But
I think downloading is almost over now because it's have the physical thing in your hand, whether that's a
yeah. But there was a while where you'd get the code on the album and you'd download it, and I think people like to have the album. But I think it's gone way beyond that now. I think there's a whole generation now where, like, I look at my son Darcy, he loves the sound of it. He's got into the sound and how much richer it is, and you know, it's gone beyond just a gimmick, or yeah, it's nice to have a big thing of, you know, the Arctic Monkeys album. It's, you know, it definitely, they get the quality. I remember sitting him down one day in lockdown and playing him, and I think it was I'm pretty certain it was an album I got off you, which was Rumors.
Yeah.
And I played him Rumors on our player, and I put on the Spotify Rumors, and his face was like, wow, like the whole drum sound. It was like we were in the room with it being recorded. And then you just put it on Spotify. It's amazing, but it's not the same. You don't get that same.
I agree. I don't think it's quite the same dynamic. I mean, maybe it's because for an album like Rumors, it was recorded in a very analog way for a very analog format. So the CD didn't exist at the time, so it was maybe going to come out on cassette if it was compressed to shit, or it was always going to be a vinyl record. So it was made for that particular.
But it just sounds fantastic. I think you could probably make the case even for an Arctics record, or you put it on and it's just got that. It feels like you're in the room. And I do think young people have got into that now. I think they realise that it's not just about. I mean, you've obviously got a huge. You know, I'm probably a very typical vinyl collector now, where I'm essentially recreating the collection I had back in the day. I mean, I lost my collection I lost two things in my wife's garage. One was my Carmen gear, which I don't know if you remember.
It blew up.
The Carmen gear, which didn't go. So obviously someone said, I want that. And the trailer must have come and took it away. And the other thing that happened was that the garage roof flooded. And all my vinyl went down, bar I salvaged a very small portion of it.
Yeah.
So obviously I was, lockdown was a time where it was like, right, let's go and get all them Clash albums. Let's get all these albums. I bought loads.
I was very lucky in that I moved house with all my collections, God knows how many times, and I always took it with me. But every time I moved house, it was slightly bigger than last time. Where now I have to have a shop to keep it all in.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good idea, especially now.
Makes sense to me.
What do you think about? What's your view on the prices? Funny enough, Spencer, my school friend who was yesterday, bought the Kick Inside Kate Bush in some charity shop yesterday for £1, and I'm like, that's worth way more than £1 now.
They sell those at about 15 because it was it's a big selling album. So there were hundreds of thousands of those.
Yeah.
They didn't all make it because a lot of them got scratched or in your garage got flooded or
that was definitely in the garage, that one.
There you go. So there's one down. So it's almost like the rarer a record is, or the fewer copies of it that were pressed. So you find albums that a good example actually is kind of some of the early 90s what you call it, shoegazy or stuff like that. So bands like Catherine Wheel, that first Fontana album, that's worth crazy money. Worth a chunk. Primal Scream's worth quite a bit. What was the album I sold the other week? Chapter House. I was really the Chapter House. I've never had one in before, and that went for I think 60 or 70 quid, something like that. Because it wasn't manufactured in such huge quantities as Kate Bush, so that was a much more successful record. But the prices come down because there's so many of them around.
Yeah.
Beatles facts. I get people coming in all the time going, I brought a couple of Beatles albums in. I'll sell them to you. I want £200 each. I'm looking at them. They're 80s represses. They're not worth anything. I'd sell them for a tenner.
Yeah.
And it's finding out that this is what's fascinated me, and the last few years, every day's been a school day, and working out why certain records that look identical are worth a lot of money. Rumors is a great one. I still every copy of Rumors I get in is 25 quid back, gone.
Yeah.
I don't think it's any accident that that's one of the best-selling albums of all time. But since I've had the record shop, that's one of the best-selling albums I've ever had in the shop. Every time, just goes.
It's just a great one. It's a great sounding record.
Stunning record. Yeah,
it's one to have for sure. Yeah.
No, really important. You've got to send me a list. I've probably got loads more. where do you? I mean, there's a couple of other questions I had. You work in the USA and you work in the UK.
Yeah.
Much of an equilibrium between the two. Is it the same out there in America?
Good question. I don't think it is, to be honest with you. I mean, it must be, but I'm just thinking about LA particularly. There's a shop we go to called Freak Beat in Studio City or Sherman Oaks, rather. That is a great vinyl shop, but I don't see as much. Like, you don't see as much kind of you don't see as much vinyl around generally, even in the charity shops. Or I'm not sure it's quite as popular as it is here. I mean, I think it's obviously prevalent, but it's not. It doesn't strike me that. And when you go visit people, it doesn't seem that vinyl is quite as big a deal. Now every record executive's got his vinyl collection in his office, and they've all got their tasteful records that they. Yeah.
Do you think it's going to get any more popular over there, or do you think it's kind of it's reached a happy hiatus between formats in the States?
I don't know. I'd imagine there's still a lot of room for growth, actually. I would imagine that it will grow. I see it growing all the time here, and I think it's only really a matter of time before it does. And I'm sure it is much bigger than I think it is. I'm going merely on very small observation of it. I'm much more aware of vinyl here. I'm much more aware of it around, whereas in America I don't see it quite so. I just don't see it. But I think there's room for growth. I think it's such a beautiful format. There's just room for growth in it.
How important do you think the artwork is?
Massively important. Yeah, massively important, I think. I mean, like, give you, so, got that for my birthday the other day, it's just absolute icon, just that straight away, you just, I think it's really important. Now, is it important because those are things that we recognize and we revisit from our childhood, or I don't know what, but I think when we're making vinyl as a label, we see it as really important that the artwork is great and that the packaging is great, and the quality of packaging. So I think you, and I think also because now you're selling it for, a fair bit more.
I don't know what a new. I mean, I'm slightly out of touch because I just sell secondhand stuff. If I want to go and buy a new album from a chart act now, I mean, I'm hearing that people are spending 30, 40, 50 quid on an album. So as a fan, it's a lot to invest. But I guess to make it as well as a record company, it's a lot to invest.
Yeah, it's a long process as well. I mean, I don't know if you know that nowadays, you've really got to be months in advance on your vinyl. I mean, you don't just finish an album and go, gosh, it's coming out in 3 weeks' time or 4 weeks' time. When you release a track on Spotify,
that's gone.
I'm finishing tracks and they're coming out 2 weeks later. When you start talking about vinyl, you're on a 4 to 6 month, and sometimes more, depending on how many you're pressing, timeline. So you better have your album mastered, artworked, everything way in advance. Like, there's no on the fly stuff anymore. And we used to do that back in the day. We could press up vinyl pretty easily.
About a month turnaround or something like that. So you could.
No. That's those days are gone. I mean, there's a few people trying to offer a solution, like a bespoke. You put it up for order, and if you sell 1,000, they'll make 1,000. But that's incredibly expensive, I think. And we did look at that for Kingfisher, and I don't know why it didn't work, but we ended up pressing them ourselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a hell of a commitment now. I mean, as I say, you'd be really. I think it would be very, very sort of short-sighted to do all of that work and not have a great package with great artwork, good quality. To me, that's not what it's about now. It's about real quality. So I do think
you give the artist quite a lot of leeway or a lot of control in how they want their.
Yeah. I think we've always done that as a label. We've always been able to give the artist quite a lot of leeway on that, really, and only really step in if we think there's a heinous mistake being made, if you know what I mean. So,
Which that does happen. I remember
it does happen. But normally what happens is you've got to the point where you're very happy with the album. You've already got an art director that you've been working with for a period of time, and so generally it's not something I have to fuss over too much. And then the band will say, "Look, we want to do a double gatefold, and then you cost it up and make it happen if you can." But I mean, as I say, most of the time I can't remember a ruction with a band over an album, a vinyl album, to be honest with you. Yeah, pretty straightforward.
The one thing I was going to, there's a couple of areas I'm kind of interested to explore. Some of it quite personal for me as well, just bands that I love. Go back to Echo and the Bunnymen, because you got the job at London Records, and Echo and the Bunnymen didn't exist anymore at that particular time. So, and I remember with great fondness, this Nothing Ever Lasts Forever coming out, and I'll have my signed white label 7-inch single from the band, and you bust everybody up to Cream in Liverpool to come and see the first show.
Yes.
But go back a bit. How did you pull that together with Echo and the Bunnymen? Did you know there were?
Well, obviously growing up in Liverpool, and talked about that time earlier. They were sort of the heroes. They were a good few years older, and they were like already making it. And they were sort of one of the bands. I remember seeing it at the Royal Court, and you'd see Matt walking around town, just the coolest dude ever. And so I was a huge fan anyway. And then I felt like actually once I sort of got into music biz, I really felt like they lost their way quite a lot sort of towards the mid to late 80s. They kind of got, first of all, they got kind of taken out, YouTube kind of just went off into the stratosphere, which, I do think affected them somewhat. And they just did. And obviously they had, a real tragedy with Pete dying. And he was such a huge part of their sound, and I think their psyche as well. And then obviously, they dissolved. Matt makes a couple of solo albums that weren't the greatest album in the world. And then they had Electrofiction comes up, which is sort of, I don't know what that was really. I mean, it was basically Will and Mac. Yeah. It was basically, why not just call yourself the Bunnymen if you're going to be Will and Mac? But obviously they got Les back in. And so I got a call. I started at London Records, and a friend of mine called Paul Toogood, who I think called me and said, "What would you say about Echo and the Bunnymen reforming?" And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, I said to him, "Look, it's just about the music. As much as I love the band, I can't really say I'm just going to do it if I don't hear the music." So I went down. So he said, "Come down to the studio." So I went down, and obviously he's telling me they're making great music. It's the best thing they've done for years, and classic manager speak. I went down to a studio in Henley. I think it was, I can't remember the studio it was. I think it's actually the guy from Jethro Tull, bizarrely. His studio in his backyard in Henley. And I don't know what they were doing there, but I walked in, and obviously with me and Mac, there was he kind of knew, he'd obviously recognized me. We kind of, we'd obviously sort of worked around in the same circles in Liverpool as we were growing up a bit. And I was really nervous, to be honest with you. I was really freaking nervous because I was like, what if this is shit? What am I going to do? It was like one of those kind of like, you're a bit kind of tense. You suddenly realize your shoulders are quite tense. and they put on, I think the first track they put on, I can't remember what the first track was. It Evergreen? Anyway, they put on a track, and instantly it sounded like the Bunnymen, and it sounded good. You know, it was like, yeah, this is really good. This is them. This is what I wanted to hear. I didn't want to hear Electric Fiction, which was a bit more kind of, I don't know what was going on with that band, but it was, I think they were trying to do something a bit more electronic-y. And as soon as I heard the first couple of tracks, I'm like, everything, the shoulders started to relax. Then I'm like, I need this. I want this. You know, this is like a band that I love, and they're making great music. And then I think about 6 track in, they played me Nothing Lasts Forever. And I'm like, oh, it's game over. It's game over. I've got to do this. And it was a relatively easy deal to do. It was not that. I think the band was, you know, I don't know what it was, but obviously, you know, the fellow Scouser, they liked the idea straight away. Paul was a friend. And so it really came together pretty quickly. And I got a guy called Cliff Norell, I think he'd been working with REM, and I got him in to make the album. And again, it was a pretty smooth album to make. We're in a studio with Oasis next door,
right?
And obviously they're doing what was there? Be Here Now. I think they were doing Be Here Now.
Be Here Now, yeah.
It was their Cocaine album, basically. So they were absolutely off their heads. And at first I was like, oh my God, Echo The Bunnymen and Oasis next door to each other. This is going to be carnage. But
yeah,
to be fair, I think Matt stayed pretty solid. We got a good record made. And then last day in the studio, we're playing it back. Liam comes in, starts singing backing vocals on Nothing Lasts Forever. Well done. Yeah, you know, that was it really. It was like, I suppose Mac was like, you know, Liam was like a young Mac really. There were similar kind of vibe about them. They kind of stood off each other a bit, but there was a bit of respect there. And he sang backing vocals, and that first record was, you know, I mean, I think it surprised a few people how well it did.
It did. I remember, you know, was it Richard Connell maybe? Did he bring it around to us? And
yeah,
for the first time. And it sounded special. I mean, you know, all of us at Revolution were all pretty big Bunnymen fans as well.
Yeah.
To hear that coming, it came a bit out of the blue actually, because I don't think any of us really realised it was going on behind the scenes. Just suddenly it was like, bang, they've reformed and they're signed to London Records, and
here's the record.
Yeah, but not going on behind the scenes to get it to that point.
Yeah.
But no, it's big. It's a big thing for us, I think, you know, when that happened.
Well, I think Nothing Lasts Forever so I think it's their equal biggest ever hit.
Yeah,
I think it got 7 or 8 in the chart. I can't remember where it got in the chart. We released it the same week as Bittersweet Symphony, the Puff Daddy song, which was the Sting song. You know that it was like killer eve to release it. I remember thinking, oh my God, but we did all right. We had a solid top 10. I think it stayed top 10. It was great to do. The second album was much harder. That was much harder. What happened, you see, I think the first album back was much more of them rediscovering who they were and what they were. And then as they had some success, the second album really became another Mac solo album. I think the other two just kind of faded away. I think Les even left sometime during the second record. Yeah, and it wasn't as successful a process. Never mind the end result. The process just wasn't as good. But you know, I wouldn't swap it. That was a great experience. You know,
it's brilliant. I mean, that's some of what I'm trying to get to here is the stuff that people don't really hear about. Is they just kind of go, oh, there was an album released by that band. They don't understand, how it came about, and hopefully some of the the podcast can interest people enough to. Cause it's a bit like when you have a record in your hand, you're holding this record. There is a story behind it, and yet for the person that's bought it, it's just kind of, I love this band or I love this singer, and I've got the record, and I'm going to put it on, I'm going to enjoy it. And kind of interested in is how it got to that point. But it's exactly the kind of thing that I want to try and
yeah, things just need to come together and work at the right time. I think that was one of those moments where, as I say, from being, almost like rigid shoulders going, oh my God, what if this isn't any good, to suddenly having, their biggest ever hit or joint biggest ever hit was an amazing experience. Yeah.
You're almost in I wouldn't say a no-win situation, but you're in a difficult situation, because if you walk in there and it's like you say, it's shit. How do you extricate yourself from? You must have had to do that.
I've done it. Yeah, you have to do it. But yeah, I mean, I always find the only way is to be straight with people. Otherwise, you just create far more stress and far more pain down the line if you don't hit something straight. And I also know that I'm the sort of person that probably has to do that, because I can't hide. It's hard to hide. If I'm not feeling it, it's quite hard to hide for me. So it's always best to kind of do it straight. Otherwise, as I say, and we've dealt with, and I remember a particular incident where we were doing something together, and someone who we were basically working with was not straight with us. And it made us mad. I think it was Nylon Bombers. Was it Nylon Bombers?
Yeah, that's right.
Signing them to Columbia or something like that. And
yeah, they were the Columbia, and I remember Columbia were interested, and they'd signed to Rondor, I think, to music.
Yeah,
I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah. Do you remember, though, it was, I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but there was an executive down there who basically told us he was signing them, and it was all systems go. I think we did a showcase.
Right.
It was all system go. And it could have took the best part of 3 months to get the truth out that he didn't want to sign them. Yeah. But every time we spoke to him, in the meantime, it was like, I just need this, and this, I need to get that out of the way. We're just releasing this record. We're just doing this. 3 months down the line, and the knock-on effect is you and me are getting mad, but we've got 4 lads in, where was Gloucestershire, or, we're trying to keep them sane. Just for one person, if you'd been straight with us at the time and gone, you know what, don't think we're going to do this.
Yeah.
Your anger's done, for that moment, and then you get over it. But anyway.
So there's one, I'm going to ask one final question, which I'm asking everybody. So, Mark Lewis, record company executive extraordinaire. Sadly, I was going to say your house is burning down, but your garage is flooding again.
Yeah.
Vinyl's in it. You can get in there. You've got time to get in there, and you can get one record out intact. What is it?
It's still London Calling. Still London Calling. It's one of the first ones I got back, when I sort of went for the recreation, and it's a double album. It keeps you amused. If I've got one record left, it'll keep me going, because it's a great double album.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Excellent.